6 p.m. I'll call this meeting to order. We do need to do a roll call. Jen.
I'm here.
Hi.
I'm here. I'm Pamela.
We're all here. We have a quorum. This meeting is being recorded by the city of Greenfield. If someone in the audience is recording, please let us know. So we have
I am recording, yes.
Recorder. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Now you can leave.
Take it easy, guys. Thank you.
No problem. Bye.
I don't believe we have anybody else here.
No.
So no one
So
from
you'll
the,
stay locked up.
Right.
from
So
public.
you have to still open it. And then close it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the fiscal year 24 year-end profitability. Public comment. There's only. I don't have to. I mean, I don't have to
Right,
open
that
anything.
seems
It's not a
like
public
some-
hearing. It's just public comment.
So,
It's public hearing. You have to open. Public
So,
comments, you're talking.
the books close tomorrow, and we need a little time to set it up. So at the next meeting, we'll go a little more in depth. But this year, despite it being a pretty tough year with some hefty one-time charges, we managed to eke out $3,977.22 worth of profit for the year. That is 3 years in a row. It was a 7.1% increase in revenue from last year, even though we did not raise prices for internet, which means internet prices have gone up $1 in the last several years. Hey, Counselor, how are you? I will say that we were in the black almost entirely because we practice a lot of cost control, including eliminating one position, which means that 6 years after I started here, our payroll is half of what it was under the previous group. And we've gone from about 200 accounts to about 2,200 accounts. So I think we've worked really hard at that. We've saved money in personnel. We've saved money in network operations. We've worked on electricity. We've really tried to find every stone we could find. And I think, given the fact that this is the last year that we're in now, we're projected to have just somewhere around $100,000 worth of profitability this year, even though we're taking on a year early the indirects, because we just thought that was the right thing to do. We're still paying the elevated extra $100,000 of the 3 years sort of debacle of the bonds, which means that in fiscal 26, our overall debt service will drop by almost $120,000. It was just over $550,000 last year, which was, knock on wood, the highest it will ever be. And we are in a position this year where I'm feeling very comfortable that we will be operating in the black. And if we are able to do what we all want to do, which is get up north as fast as we can, we know there are a lot of people who would like to be GCET customers. So we're I think after a long time to try to build up the customer base to the point where it could support what we needed to do, we have been able to do that. Like I said, next month we'll go into this a little bit more in depth, but this is the 3rd year in a row that ratepayers have paid for everything. In GCET, where they paid for the grant, they paid for operations, and we see that just going forward. So next on the agenda is the MBI GAP grant. I am happy to say that there were 4 organizations in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts that received GAP grant funding: Comcast, Verizon, Charter, and GCET. We have a minimum $750,000 of grant funding. We are going through what's called a reconciliation process, and it is relevant to building up north as well, Counselor, because when we first did this, we used the old FCC data set because that's all there was. And then we got about 3/4 of the way through and they went, oh, wait, there's a new data set. So after they awarded us the money, they came back and said, wait, there's more places we want to get to. The point of this is digital equity, and it's really focused on getting to some of the farthest places in town away. And it's also focused on, which I think is really important, making sure that really crucial city things like the well field, like the transfer station, that now work on, the IT team has done a great job cobbling together solutions, but they really should be connected to the network in a reliable way. And they've added in more houses. So we went back and said, okay, well, if there are more houses, that's great, but it will cost more to get to more houses. We have sent them back our analysis of what's a house. And just because it looks like a roof on a satellite image, that doesn't mean it's not a broken down barn in the middle of a field. So we're working our way through. I personally think it's going to end up being over $1 million that we will have. And it will be great because it will address a couple of things that are really important. First of all, it's good for digital equity, which is one of the big reasons we're here. And we will get out to Bascom Road, and we will get out to places in Councillor Golub's precinct that have really struggled to get someone to connect to them because Comcast would tell them it would be $50,000 to come down the private road to where they are. So we're going to be able to connect a lot of people. We're going to connect up, I think, as importantly, a lot of city issues. It's going to get us into the office park so we can connect up businesses as well. And the other thing it's going to do for it's in the north, it's also going to get us all the way out Wisdom Way in the south so we can get to neighborhoods there, all covered by the grant. And the other thing it does is it's going to allow us to purchase machinery that will let us, in certain cases, not have to go on the polls, not have to go through the make-ready process that is so frustrating and expensive. We can buy what are called vibratory plow machines, air rams, which allow for digging in sensitive areas with compressed air. We also in the grant is ground penetrating radar. So we can see, we've tried to work with the town and with Berkshire, but the truth is a lot of utilities really don't know where their pipes are in the ground. And we need to know because we can't cut through them. But it means that we can run in the right of way. Greenfield owns the rights to the right of way. We can't charge, unfortunately, private companies for using the right of way for their poles, but we can actually go right along the poles and lay underground because fiber does not need to go below the frost line. And in neighborhoods, we can go right down the greenway and not have to deal with poles. Our long-term goal, I know we're talking about poles and we need to now, it will take years, but the end state of GCET is to not be on a single pole and not depend on any competitor's private infrastructure to carry what we have. And this grant, among the other things we do, will bring us that machinery that will help us get all that done, but it's also going to help us manage our make-ready exposure going forward, because we could just get down off of some poles we are on now and not have to pay make-ready. So there are a number of reasons that it's great. Reconciliation isn't done yet, and that's always fun. We sent back all the info we have to MBI, who is now reviewing that data. We've had discussions about what will need to be in the new budget, so we'll know what we need to say, okay, then we need this much money. So we're as far along as we can be at this point. They generally have said it will be another week or two before they can get back to us, and we'll go from there. So I think that is really great because it works very much hand in glove with ARPA and the ARPA money we need for the North build, because those things don't happen exactly concurrently, but they overlap by a lot. And there are some areas that we won't have be part of the ARPA build because they can be covered by the GAP grant, and that will allow us to use the money we need, the encumbered money, the allocated encumbered ARPA money, the $321,000 that is set aside to deal with the big bomb that we got left of all the licensing and make-ready work the original group didn't do. So this was a big deal for us. And we also, we spent a lot of time with MBI, and most MLPs cannot do what we can do. They do not have the people who can actually go out, and they don't have an active OSP plant. They don't have people who can do all the engineering. There's a lot of ability here at GCET, and it was nice to have MBI recognize that for us too. So we will keep you informed on how that is working, but at the moment, I thought that was pretty good company to be in. 3 giant multinational corporations and us. Yeah. Oh, no, you're 100% right. We are. I think part of it is we sort of leaned into the G. Then now you can say you don't give everything to Comcast. And so, and if that works for us, then I have no shame in doing that at all.
I just want to double up on like some basics of this, because I find that there's often a lot of confusion about grant money versus grant money versus grant money. Okay, so there's grant money in the town, like CDBG, which is like a block grant that comes from the federal government, and then the town has choice.
Right.
There's ARPA money, which was a grant that came through special COVID
Right.
dollars, which was handled differently, and then it gave the executive sort of authority over how to spend that.
Right.
None of those have to be, there's paperwork. This is a competitive grant, which is different.
Right.
Right. So the funding opportunity, the federal government is putting broadband money down into states, and the states have some discretion about how to make that money available. They put out a request for proposals, and then you can choose or not choose.
Right.
So to apply for it. So one of the reasons why we're the only local broadband, the guys, we're one of the only ones that applied for it.
Mhm.
Right. Because it takes initiative to decide not only that we were going to go for that, but to have capacity. That's right. And the ability to do that planning and to give them this enough technical detail to get the money. So I just think it's what that is really a special thing. It's not, and a grant is not a grant, is not a grant. You really have to, in this case, you really have to be ready for it and able to sort of like go for it to win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to apply that we weren't qualified.
Yeah, no.
That's what I need to say is that we got it. That's probably necessary to even realistically apply, but
Right.
we did it, so exactly, it's rhetorically that we don't. just try to-
Right. And I will take that all day long. Sure. Mhm.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
number one. For any
Absolutely.
kind of grant,
Yep.
you better show that you really need this.
That's right.
And there's a purpose. to
That's
it,
right.
And that many of them do expire, like some of the CDBG, all of that
They
stuff.
did, you're right.
So my question is, since this is MBI, have you had to work with FRCOG at all? Are you able to just do this on GCET's own?
Yes, in this instance, GCET is the administrator of this group.
Right, what's that called, the LLP or whatever that they used? There's another company, there's MBI, there's GCET. We were gonna use FRCOG, we got to skip FRCOG maybe when we do work over there in the Weldon. I forget what it's called, it's in my notes, that fourth entity.
Yeah,
You've got
I'm
the
sorry,
city, you've
I
got
don't remember
yourself.
off the top.
Yeah, it's like a quadrant.
Right,
It's like 4 different entities, and
Right.
you make sure that money doesn't dry up so that you say, oh, you guys are great, and now the money is gone, and then you
Sure.
don't have internet anymore for poor
Right,
people, for
right.
example.
and you're right, and another point is that's a grant that's different again, and that the actual administrator of the grant, that is really more NBI than anybody else, because the grant goes, in fact, to the building, it goes to the Shotgun company,
Right.
who then will choose who they want to work with. So we will be the sort of day-to-day administrators of that grant, but the real administrator,
People listening and watching.
Or is that
We're
wrong?
talking about thing.
yes, we're talking about the residential.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
let's do it. I just want to make that
So
clear.
let's jump back and
Yeah.
start.
well, I think that what Pamela is talking about is a digital equity that was.
The planning
Well,
grant.
The
whole thing
planning
in
grant.
Chelsea, yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
so that's a
They
planning
used to do
grant
that, right.
that it has been awarded to the city, $100,000, and economic development in Athena, the grant writer. And I worked on that, getting and doing the digital equity plan and then doing the digital equity implementation grant that awarded us, I think, the city $86,000 to use towards digital equity. So that includes getting hotspots and things like that. And a portion of that will be to fund, low-income housing residents for free or internet. So that's on a different docket though. The
It's a different
retro,
type of situation.
yeah,
Because
so,
we had for COG come over.
right,
And
that's what
they
that
they
was.
all came and explained all kind, we had a lot of people and a lot of involvement.
Yes,
And then there's what happened out in Chelsea, and that's when you needed to get on the waiting list in time for some of the other.
It just goes to show what happened was several years ago, a tremendous amount of money was released from the federal government. It took the states years to get themselves organized enough, and then it all came out at once. So there's digital equity, there is ARPA, there is municipal gap networks grant, and then there is now what we can talk about is the residential retrofit, which is specifically money to go towards connecting large multi-dweller units, which are typically a lot more expensive to wire up, particularly if they're old, like the Weldon, and they don't have built-in chases that allow you to work within the building. Well, you're talking about digital equity, and we are looking, because there are other entities in town who are working with NBI on residential retrofit. Our choice was to work on the Weldon because we thought that was the one that was the most appropriate for it. We did hear from them, and I want to hear from you guys. Maybe you guys should talk about this a little more, that we are finalists and we went through a walkthrough process, and maybe the two of you can talk a little bit about that.
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, we applied for the the residential retrofit grant. And that-
applied to.
To MBI for that. So, and this is for low income housing, right? So any of the MDUs that are on that were low income housing.
Right.
Currently, there are 2 rounds. This was first round, and the Weldon was the only one in Greenfield that was on the list. So we went ahead, we applied. This grant was very technical. So thanks to Bill over here and his ability to make everybody understand technical things. There was a lot to it. And it was amazing that we were able to do it and that we were picked. So we did just do a walkthrough. It was us and Comcast. The top 3 were to do the walkthrough, and there was only 2 of us. So it was interesting.
Then what's the next step? Is you could have rebid.
So, right, so there are a few things that we can change. One of them is the budget based on this walkthrough, and then we will resubmit that. And there's 2 other sections that we can make changes to if we need to. I don't think that we feel that we need to. The budget will need to be tweaked a little bit. We'll resubmit it. And then by the end of August, they should award it to somebody. So, they say end of August, that's probably end of September. And then they will open up the second round of the retrofit, and there may be locations in Greenfield.
The
or
biggest
GHA.
locations, based on-
Well, so the owner or the operator of the locations has to send a letter of interest, which is what Ashaka did for the Weldon. And also within that said that they supported GCET. So I don't know how much how many points you get for that, but that's a great plus on our side. Yeah. So, and again, that grant is substantial. There's no way anybody could ever redo the Weldon without a grant. It's like $700,000. It's something.
And can I just say, as a resident living there, every day, people are asking, how much longer?
I know, they
you
come
came
here.
through, they're calling you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they're paying way too much with Xfinity for internet only. They're paying a huge amount of money for their television, don't want internet. And so I hear it constantly, and they know you came.
Yeah.
And so somebody else came and they said, oh, I think GCET came back. And I was like, I don't know, I'm unaware, but like they know it's in the works. And that's our joke, is we're working on it for everything over there. So I just say, be patient. It's in the works, this time.
I mean, I think if they wanted to go to Shaka, it would be clear who they would like to see get the contract back going.
I think we have done that, but when you first came over, people should know that John came over and met with them at our coffee hour, was very honest, he was very concerned. We didn't even have, 911 calls working at that point in time. That's much, people were very upset about your health. You have to have your health issues taken care of. And so that's all been fixed. And John met with a bunch of people there and talked about that could mean that they might decide they just want to have money go for you know who. And then he has said, no, she's expressed an interest in it.
Yeah, I think at this point it is up to MBI. So MBI has a scoring criteria. The bill makes this joke that we 100% hope it's us, because it is going to be fiber to every unit in that building, and you will have the best internet in the state,
For a
probably.
lot less.
You know,
Fastest
internet in the state. Look, because of this. So,
Just to be clear, Shawcett makes the decisions.
no, Shaka does not make the
Well,
decision.
MBI can decide, but we residents, it's up to who's in charge. It's who we write the rent check to. That's how it works.
No, so at this point, Shaka has handed it over to MBI, and MBI makes a decision based on scoring criteria. And we do not know what we scored, and we do not know what Comcast scored.
Oh, so when John says go and see what we can.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression that Shaka did have some influence and has made it clear to MBI that they wanted competition in the building. I don't know.
I mean, they did previously,
Okay.
but at this point, I think it's just based on
Okay.
our application and the scoring that we.
Okay.
we
Good.
get.
Because we can write a letter and say, we're still waiting.
Yeah.
What do you think? That's who we prefer, I can work on that,
I
see
don't
if it
think
matters.
Things like
That's true.
Thank you. I just wanted that clarified.
Next, we had a meeting with a representative. I say we, I wasn't here. It was these two who met. So would you talk about that, please?
You kill it.
So Senator Markey's in-state lead on telecommunications, Mark Lanigan. And actually, John had met with Senator Markey and MBI right after COVID started. He came out and wanted to know how things were going. And so this is their second meeting with us. It's great. He's doing an MLP tour. And the number one thing that he told us was every MLP has discussed with him the make ready and how long it takes, how much it costs, and the need for a one-touch make ready in this state. So, we were preaching to the choir. He took a lot of notes, but he also wanted to just congratulate us on the GAP grant because Senator Markey is somebody that pushed for the federal funds to be put towards broadband and felt really strongly about that. So it was a great meeting. He was here for over an hour. He took many, many notes and thanked us. We were pretty open and honest. And he said, whenever we need a letter, Senator Markey is happy to write for anything else that we need. They are impressed. He said, you're a unicorn, which is the word we hear.
Which is not a crazy thing to ask for, which is a letter of support to MBI for this grant from the federal delegation or from Murphy's office to say that it explicitly supports MLPs and please, that would be appropriate. So it never hurts to ask. They'll tell you why they can't do it if they can't do it, but otherwise,
So the same is true for McGovern, right?
Yeah. It was great.
Okay, thank you. So, I want to talk now about where we are with the North Build. I've been corresponding through email with the mayor for several months, and she's had a lot of questions about how ARPA money would be spent. ARPA money for GCET has been paused for 2 months. And I recently said, I don't think anybody's not trying to be transparent, but there's enough that's going back and forth now that I really think that we need to make an extra effort to speak in public forums so people can have access to it, that I copied counselors on what had been said before, because I get emails from individual counselors too. And I just think that even if no one wants to do it at all, you can end up coming to the end and figuring out that 50 to 60% of the decision was made outside of the view of anyone. And it's just not the right thing to do. So one of the requests from the mayor was to have a presentation, her be able to see a plan for the North Build, which we're happy to do. So I said, I want to do it here. She also has some other questions, which I will read here, and then I will send this out, and I will send the answers to those questions out, and I will talk to the mayor, and I will copy counselors on them as well. Because from now on, I really feel like the most appropriate thing to do, which is why we were one of the first people to do the hybrid meetings, is people should be able to see this. This is a lot of money. It matters to a lot of people, and it should all be done out in the open. So at the moment, we are close to the point, after years worth of make ready, GCET has two different buckets of money that were allocated to us by the previous mayor. There is about $321,000 that is allocated and encumbered specifically for make ready costs. And there's a little more than $90,000 that's allocated to us for North Build. And specifically, we can do a lot at GCET, but we don't have the equipment and the expertise to do everything. And we have talked for a while now about what we need to be able to spend ARPA money that's been allocated to us to make the connections we need to make the North Build happen. This is a table of contents, so we don't need to spend a lot of time. Over $500,000 of equipment has been purchased, including an LCP building on Severance. That LCP is important. We need it to power North Build connectivity. We need to install and configure equipment, but all of that equipment has been purchased with ARPA. And it's all sitting and waiting until we can get this last bit of money released to us from the grant administrator, who's the mayor. We bought fiber, we've bought strand, we've bought mounting equipment, access points. We have bought things we need to basically do configurations in the LCP and in the POP. It's all here, it's all waiting. And if anybody is interested in it, all the financial information about these purchases and for everything GCET does is always available. We put together about a 500-page sort of cross-reference binder for the mayor, but all the information we gave her, she was in her offices. It's in accounting and in procurement, because everything we buy goes through accounting in the city. There are no other invoices. I think there were initially some concerns that maybe there were some other invoices. That's not possible. We have to go through the city. So anyone in the mayor's office or the council at any time can go and see everything we bought. Why we bought it was further questions from the mayor that we've answered as well. And I just want to be clear that every bit of money GCET spent has been accounted for, paid through the city, audited by the city every year, and reviewed by the Department of Revenue. So if there's any question about, and that anybody has about how money's been spent, it's all public. It's all out in the open so people can see. And we have spent, because we were allocated this money years ago, we have spent a good chunk of money to get ready to go for the North Build.
John, I hate to interrupt, but for the public's concern, I've heard this before. Could you tell them what LCP it stands for?
Yes, and I will. I can tell you, and we actually have a
Oh, good.
So LCP stands for Local Convergence Point. And I'm going to ask you to wait for a slide or two, because
That's okay.
NBI is the Mass Broadband Institute, and they are the group that the state has designated to be the administrators and the dispersers of the different grant monies that have come from the federal government, because look, we're talking about federal grant money here.
But it's existed for how long?
The federal
NBI.
NBI?
Existed,
Oh,
was formed
At least 20 years ago.
Yep. And when was the first time we received money from them?
When we applied.
Well,
Yeah,
we haven't actually.
We received it yet. And this is our
Right.
first award for
Right.
NBI.
Right.
That NBI.
right.
Obviously.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's
20
true.
years and the 10
That's
years
true.
of
Yes.
organization, we have nothing.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a really great point, because I did talk, when
Mhm.
Mark from Senator Markey's office came, he said, we are different than every other MLP that you have gone out to talk to. There are the MLPs that came from the electric world, right, that have money in the bucket ready to go for broadband. Then there are the hill towns that had no broadband, and everything was paid for, most of everything was paid
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
by grant funding.
Yep.
Right.
We have done it all on our own and not received any
Right.
grant. And he was like, wow, sit down.
Right.
Right, so,
Yeah.
yes,
So we're kind of uniquely
Yeah.
on our own since
Yes.
the beginning.
right, and who rolls their own
Right.
trucks and
Right.
does all of
Which is to
our-
say, it's not that it pencils out from the beginning. It's
No.
just that your seed funding has to come from somewhere, and this,
Right.
the hill towns, it came from BI, and for the electric,
Right.
just the pure electrics, it came
For
from their
example,
revenue.
Leverett and Shutesbury were paid almost, there were, their bonds in total, if you take all that money and divide it out, it was over $5,000 a home to connect them up. Shutesbury was well over $3,500 a home. The initial bond for GCET was about $570 per home.
Right.
So we have had to be very frugal, and we've had to work to stretch and make things work for us, because we've never had the funding. And getting this kind of funding, which is why ARPA is so important, why we really can't do the North Bill without it, is that at a certain point, you just need to have some support. And this is what federal funds are for. It concerns me when people sort of conflate local tax revenues and federal grant money. They are not the same thing at all. And I would say almost every department in Greenfield has used federal grant money before. So it is the way that infrastructure gets built, because the federal government knows that small towns like Greenfield cannot afford it.
Every department. And no department is asked to give 500 pages worth of questions and answers
That's
for their
true.
grants.
It's politically untenable to save money in a municipal government. You can't have it just doesn't work, because somebody's gonna wanna spend the piggy bank. And so, it's one of the main functions of state and federal grants is to basically provide that sort of capital that's sort of insensitive to those political things. It's just how it works, so it is your tax dollars. They were collected already anyway.
Right.
It's just gonna go to some other town if we don't apply.
Correct.
So the first thing, the longest time in this whole process has been make ready. Senator Markey is right. They hear it from everyone. We send an update out to the mayor and the council on the 12th of July. There's only been minor progress, although we contact them pretty much every week and say, how we doing? Where are we? We don't see an engines ticket for this. Some comm space work is now complete. We have been able to do some GCET work, and Comcast is now next to go on new poles. Unfortunately, on Green River Road, while they were looking to set the final pole that we talked about last time, they found another pole they want to reset. So we have heard from Verizon that those will be set in the next couple of weeks. I will believe that when it happens. The original bill for and this is just a little example, the original bill for the make ready for this was paid from encumbered ARPA funds. So we're now going to be billed for the change, and that has to come from encumbered ARPA funds at all, because you can't build out in the licensed area until make ready is finished and you get a license. It's not legal. So what we need and what we are preparing is an IFB, which is invitation for bids for ARPA money, American Reconstruction. It's been so long, I can't remember. ARPA. And we need to follow 30/30M, which means we have to pay prevailing wage. It's okay. And since it is ARPA money, it has to go, an IFB for that has to go through the city. And it will address needs we have, the things we can't do ourselves. We need a fiber construction crew to pull 96 count fiber because we just don't have machinery big enough to do that. We will utilize a fiber assist machine, which frankly just allows it to be lifted up in ways that we can't do. There's several poles that require climbing because they're too far off the road. Nobody here has the expertise to climb poles like that. Our team will assist with all of this because GCET is really going to end up doing 80 to 90% of all the work here because it's so much more cost effective for us to do it. We also need an underground conduit pull on Severance to get underneath 91 to get to the LCP, and we need conduit placed on Leiden Road. And this is how things can change because we got all the way through the make ready process. And then we went out and they went back out and noticed the high tension wires are so low that the new pole they wanted to put up isn't legal because you get into an excluded zone under the high tension wires. So now we have to, after make ready was all done, they came back and went, oh, no, wait, sorry, this has to be a conduit here because it's the only way to make that happen. All of this requires specialized labor and equipment that GCET doesn't have, and it's essential for the North Building. If we don't get that money released, then it's not going to happen. So I think part of the question and answer process was the mayor saying that she wanted to feel more comfortable. We have now given her 2 months worth of answers to questions. We've given her a 500-page binder that itemizes everything we've spent. We've cross-referenced it for her so it can be easy for her to look where we've worked and what we've done, where we've worked. We're working through the request for to see how the plan will work. She has some other questions here that mostly are about who goes first and how that's going to work, and I will get to that as well. So once we're done with this, there's really nothing more to tell her. We've told her what we spent. We've told her, we will tell her, and I will give her this as well, what our plan is for going forward. It's then just time to put the IFB together and get to work. We will do that with the mayor, and we're actually meeting with the mayor and the new chief finance officer tomorrow because there is no procurement agent for the city. There hasn't been for more than 6 months. And these have to get done. So what we will do is, man, we're fine. We're happy to do it. And the IFB will be even more granular in its detail. So at that point, we literally have no more information to give people. And it's really just time to decide whether that money will be released or not.
John, can I add something?
Mhm.
We did an original IFP in 2021, 2022, 2022. And it included everything that you see here and more. Our expectation was that Make Ready was going to be done much quicker, and we wanted to get this done fast and get it out to everybody. The bids that came in for all the labor were almost $300,000. And we said, there's no way that we can do that. We can't justify spending that much money when we can do a lot of this work. It'll be a little bit slower. And so the city at that point was ready to use the ARPA funds to pay for what we are requesting again in this new IFB. And we've really taken a deep look at what we can do, what we can't do. And like John said, you know, nobody wants Valentine up on a pole. That's not going to end well.
Sorry, Bill, if you want.
Well, the point is, this is allocated to us years ago.
Right. With this purpose.
With this purpose. So what will happen? The IFB labor, essentially GCET will pull what's called 96 count, which means it will pull a main trunk line that can carry a lot of data.
I just want to pause for a second. We cannot do an IFB unless we know that we have the money,
Right.
right? So it's like, this is all academic
Right.
while the money is in jeopardy, because we cannot.
Right.
So I've been in communication with the mayor and Stella, and said, I need the city's support in doing this IFB. I can do a lot of the work based on what I did with Laura last time and my understanding, but I need somebody to verify everything is done correctly and legally, and we need to make sure that we're using ARPA funds for this before we move forward.
Right, that was, going to be one of my questions. The previous IFP, what was the timeline on that from start to finish? Getting ready, getting bids.
Yeah, that's a great
Was that a 2-month
question.
process? Was that a
Probably.
process?
Yeah,
it's about
it was
2 months.
probably 2 months, if not a
Right.
little bit longer. And then Laura and I took about a week and a half to digest and figure out, who won what bid. Because there was a lot of equipment, right? We purchased all the equipment. And the way that we wrote this, that IFB, and the way that I will write this one is you can bid on some of it. You can bid on all of it. You may not win, so in that circumstance, I think 4 different equipment vendors won and nobody won the labor. Because it's just.
So to your
Yeah, that
point,
makes sense.
it's appropriate for us to work on the new IFB, but that's the last thing.
But we can't
do.
issue it.
We can't issue
We
it.
can't
We-
because it's city ARPA money.
Right, exactly. The money
Right.
has to actually be available to
Right.
be issued.
Right, we can't.
Yeah.
So this is the last thing we can do
Yep.
until this money is released to us.
Yep.
It's been on pause for months. If it stays on pause, everything stops. So
I have a question about that, but I don't want to interrupt. So, because I have no idea, but would the questions that you were talking about that the mayor has, is that because individuals are asking, what about me? And how much longer?
it may be.
Do you have any idea?
No, she sends me questions, I ask them, and she sends me more questions. So
But do you know what they pertain to? It's my question. You don't
I
know?
don't know why she's asking. No, she hasn't shared that.
Okay. But, well, I guess I'm just guessing that it's constituents who
Mhm.
are asking specific questions.
Sure.
How much longer, that kind of thing.
But-
I'm not speaking for the
Right,
mayor, I'm
so
just wondering.
I understand.
Okay,
But the truth is, as grant administrator, what needs to be focused on is this project appropriate for ARPA funding? It is manifestly appropriate.
Mhm.
Is this money going to be spent in a way that will produce the results that we need? Clearly, it will. So people will ask questions forever, but really what needs to happen is if we've answered questions, if we've shown what we've spent money on, if we're showing what we are planning to spend money on to finish this, then the really only decision is this appropriate for ARPA or not? The mayor is the grant administrator. There's a lot of power with the grant administrator. But we have to remember, it's about this ARPA portion of the bill. It isn't just about anything in GCET. This is what we're doing, is making the case, and we should, I have no trouble with that at all, for saying that we will spend this ARPA money appropriately.
But I think what you're asking probably, and I would agree, because if you look at the questions, there are questions like, what comes first? Log Plain Road or Meadow Lane, or
Who gets it
And-
first?
and those types of questions, our answer is it's based on a lot of different factors, not based on who lives on Log Plain Road or Meadow Lane. And so it's
Right.
based on the engineering and how the
Right.
process
We will-
moves forward. And trying to get into those types of details makes me personally uncomfortable as saying,
Well,
because it is
here's-
personal.
here's what I'm uncomfortable about. We keep having public comment and they're not there. So if they could come either on a Zoom or in this room, we could hear their concern, because I'm not so sure they're gonna sit down and watch a YouTube later on. Do you know what I mean? You
Right.
still may be getting questions. She could get calls and you could say, refer them to the YouTube so they hear what we're saying here. This is what goes on at city council every month.
Well, we know that there's questions that get asked about GCET that do not get sent to GCET commissioners or to the office, they get sent to counselors.
Yeah,
Which
They're
that's
not coming to me. I
No,
don't
they
get
get sent to
questions.
counselors.
I know.
We don't see them, which that's a problem. I mean, if it's out of
Well,
GCET.
that's
then it
what
should
my
be
point
asked.
is, come and speak up with your concern. And then if they want to
But all
call
we
Vern
can
or
do
call
is,
you or
is
call
be,
him.
all we can do is follow the process the city has for an open meeting, which we do.
Perfect.
We've
Right.
invited counselors and Counselor Healy's come. I invited every counselor. We're doing everything we can.
Mhm.
Part of this process for me though, is reinforcing that law of you can control what you can control. And what we can control is making a case, and I think we have, and we made it before, and now we're having to make it again, that says we need this money for the build. We've invested over $500,000 that will just sit idle if this money isn't released. We're showing you, and will continue to show you, how we're going to spend it and general timelines and how it's going to work. There's nothing else we can do. We've shown what we spent, what we're planning on spending, how it will work.
Which is why you
Any
have a
questions
meeting
now?
tomorrow. Do you have a meeting? Did I hear it right?
Yeah.
You have a meeting tomorrow and you
Mhm.
with the mayor and Stella, the new financial, person, right?
Right.
That's what I see is happening. It's like, that's a
And
great
that, and
idea.
that may
This
be,
meeting
that,
is a
and
great
that,
idea.
that may be, but we're trying to answer the questions that we've been asked in good faith, and,
Yep.
and we're reminding people that this isn't new. This isn't money that's being allocated for the first time. These are plans that have been in place for a long time.
Yep.
And at the end, we're going through this process again, and it's fine that we're doing that. But we all have to recognize that it can't be an endless process with no definition of what the end state is.
No, I want to make a couple of points about that. I get it that people are emailing and constituents are concerned. Let's remember, like, I'm a resident, I'm a volunteer. I've been on this commission for several years. I don't get paid. I show up, I take the time. No one has ever shown up to these meetings. And it's fine. I'm still here to represent them. I represent my neighbors that have it, my neighbors that don't have it, right? I represent everyone in this community, not the two complainers, right? Like, that's really, it's just important. We have 2,200 households that have this service that are happy with it, that we need to protect their interests, right? As much as we need to protect the interest of the future customer. And so that's the stability of this organization is what our job is as the commissioners, right? And so to place projects at risk, this just feels really whimsical to be constantly like throwing more and more questions at a thing. That's really just like if you don't want to spend the money, just say you don't want to spend the money, right? You can come up with endless objections and questions that will just keep delaying this to the point where our money will just expire.
What I would say, right, is that I would say a lot of people's concerns and questions, and certainly the ones that have been directed to me personally, have to do with timelines.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like, it stops when there's timelines.
Right, and you will see that
That's right.
here.
That's right.
I think what I found the most frustrating of all of this is the make-ready process is so long. and
Of course.
so difficult
Exactly.
Of
that
course.
I'll go when, and our answer is until the make-ready's done, I can't tell you.
But
No,
Because
but
I don't trust anything
This
they
is
tell me.
to my point.
Yeah.
The point is that there's no way to address these concerns without a timeline,
Right,
which we cannot currently have.
We just don't
Right.
control.
But so that's unfortunate that people are sad.
And yet we make
But-
progress, and yet we keep adding
Right.
areas and customers. So I think the other piece that I want to point out is
Sure.
that, I've had the luxury, you've had the luxury of several years of being here, hearing and seeing, going into executive sessions, seeing the engineering, understanding the process that goes into this, how are determinations made based on technology, what are going to be the material costs, what are going to be the labor costs, how can we get into a space where we'll pick up enough customers so that covers, that's our ROI, that
Right.
enables us to do the next thing. I don't expect people to trust that immediately. I think that people should take the time to get to know the process,
Mhm.
right? And I think people should show up and learn that because it's actually pretty impressive, right? But that's not something that's immediately obvious or easy to grok. I think what often happens when people are confused, when something seems complicated, they feel like anxious and suspicious. And that's kind of the state that we're in. We're at that point in the learning journey where some more people are paying attention to GCET and they're like, that's so scary because it's complicated. And I think we're used to it because we're like, it's very complicated. And that's why we spend a lot of time talking about the engineering and the costs and the labor and the capital outlays and the technology and whether it's gonna be open source or proprietary, blah, blah, blah.
And the first headline in 5 years
Yeah.
was about transparency because a handful of councilors decided they wanted, and the mayor wanted to. throw that
Yeah, and I
one
wish all the
The
councils
first
have been invited.
front page article. Of all the good things that GCET has done.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the front
We
page.
just got like almost $1 million probably, that we're gonna get in grants. No
That won't be an
word,
article.
No social media, there's nothing about that.
So, all right, so. There was.
Yeah.
You do have something, or?
No,
Yeah,
I-
you want to, yeah.
So, I'm just gonna say, the momentum's really rolling in the right direction. Everything's going smoothly. You're seeing progress with the make ready phase, which is what's been delaying you for so long. And it would be a shame if the mayor prevented this continuing to move when it has so much momentum built up, right?
agree.
Customers have been waiting 10 years.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it's the one question that I get asked daily in my precinct.
See?
I'm sure Councilor
Yeah.
Gold does as well, right? And
Yeah.
I give him the same answer that I've gotten, right? It's a utility issue. I deal with utilities. It's a slow, lengthy process, but we're getting there. And to like put a roadblock in the middle of the road right now is the worst thing the city could possibly do right now.
I mean, I gotta say, if the complaints are that we can't get service, that's positive.
Totally, totally, good problem to have.
What I will say, so let's keep going, Jeff, because we are addressing some of these things. So I just a little bit of a visual aid. Here's how it works. You have main line, you have a fiber. This is a what count?
This is a 288.
This is the
I have one of those
288
in my
count
office,
fiber.
like that.
All right, which means there are 288. Right.
You can
pass it
Right. A 288 fiber. The way it works is you pull higher capacity fibers to certain areas, and then you pull lower capacity fibers, we call them laterals, into neighborhoods. The first thing you have to do is pull the high capacity fiber so you can in fact, and that fiber doesn't go to every neighborhood. That fiber follows a path that is engineered so you can pull laterals off into different neighborhoods. So the first thing you have to do is pull the main backbone fiber for the area. You have to pull it up to the LCP, and then you have to pull it beyond the LCP as well. So that's first. That's the stuff that we don't have the equipment to do.
For reference, that line to the right is Route 5 and 10, Berniston Road. And
It's Berniston Road, yes. We're going up Berniston Road, over Severn Street, over to Barton Road, and down Leiden Road to terminate at Nash's Mill, right? So they can be small laterals. It can just go into a little street, or a big one, which is, for example, a 48 count fiber pull that will go up to Meadow Lane and go up to all the houses on Green River Road. We can do that. The 96 is the one that we just don't have the equipment to do. So that's what we're doing first. If
So
people-
just to be clear again, and you said it,
Mhm.
if someone was looking at this and said, hey, my street's not on that, that's not because you're not gonna get it.
Right,
just-
it's because there is a.
But you just got rid of his whole precinct.
Yeah. So, and I do say, this is easily among the most, if not the most complicated thing a municipality does. There's a level of complexity to internet service. This is a major construction build. So, and people need to understand, this is not, you don't just go out and to tie it onto the pole. There is a tremendous amount of engineering work. When you get to the IFB and you get down into the granularity, we know every pole along this place. We've taken every opportunity to make sure that this is the most efficient path. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Some of it is less accessible, and it doesn't, I mean, we don't ask every single detail about how the new sewer extension works. There has to be some good faith here that people are trying to do their jobs. And we'll explain as much as we can, but there are always going to be questions.
What sort of always?
Sorry. So the next thing that has to happen, because we need to keep moving along. So the next thing that has to happen is that we pull to an LCP on Severn Street. And I want to ask Bill to sort of describe what an LCP is and why it's so important, a local convergence point.
Right, so you've heard the term, we say a lot, the local convergence points. It's kind of like also known as like a fiber hut. So it's like these sheds that are like randomly placed off the road, or I feel like they're randomly placed off the road. And they house electronic equipment, specifically for the fiber optic cables. They house special switches, special optronics that power the fibers to the homes or to the neighborhoods or whatever. So we plop these down in strategic areas on the network where we can feed out to multiple places. Because when we look at, I mean, if you want to go back to the slide with that backbone real quick.
Sure.
You know, as using this as an example, we actually have, like, I think around Fresh King Highway, we have one of our LCPs here.
Right.
we're putting an LCP up here because it is very expensive to get over 91, right? I mean, that is a very tough pull. We put an LCP up here because we take one of the 96 count fibers up to here and we can break it out. We can times it by 2 or 3 out of these huts to the neighborhoods. And that's how we're going to feed these fibers throughout the network. So they're housing specialized equipment to do that, and they're temperature controlled, and they have some level of backup power at them. So we place them at strategic points throughout the network, and to hopefully, knock wood, this will be the last one we install.
Yes, it is the last one that we plan. The mayor did ask, how many LCPs do we have and how many do we plan? There is an LCP on French King Highway, sort of near where you go up into Sunset and that little neighborhood up there. There is an LCP behind the Academy of Early Learning, and they're placed based on how many households and businesses we think we will have to connect up to them. And they're also, so you don't have to drag giant 266 cables all over town. It's very hard to do. It's very expensive. And in some cases, it makes it really impossill to get the make-ready work done. It also means there's less latency. It also means there's better strength of signal. It's just better.
But you think that we may be at the point where to do anything in the town, we have the LCPs that we need?
Yeah,
probably.
because if you look at this, by the time this is done and laterals off it covering this whole area, coverage in town will be around 94, 95%. The only areas that we haven't surveyed are Munson, Laurel, and Shelburne, which are those pocket areas because we have surveyed out Wisdom Way. Those are about 400 houses. It's actually more like 3.5 or 4%. There are some other areas we still need to figure out a way to get into Leiden Woods. So, but if you add it all up, it's still really 5 or 6% of the entire. So most of the work we've done, most of the coverage we have, most of the make-ready money we're going to spend is already all committed because we have covered a large section of the town. We're not done. We get it there. We want to get as close to 100% coverage. Although if you look around at MLPs and private companies in the state, almost no one covers every single person in an area or they say, sure, we'll cover you. It's going to cost you 50 grand to get our coverage.
And to John's talking about this backbone, the North Build is tricky because we have the core of the network already has a backbone. So we've been able to kind of cherry pick and get these side streets done with these laterals over the last couple of years. And it's like, oh, they can do that quickly. But a full build out north, this is probably the biggest build to date since the start of GCET.
Yeah.
And it's crossing new areas that we haven't been into. So when we talk about coming back to do laterals, it's not, that's something GCET can do, and we're really good at that. Right. But this is the big part of the network that we need to do right, get it done right.
And here's a place where we can talk about who gets what when. Here's how it works. You get to this little dot is the LCP. When you pull laterals, you work outward from the LCP. You do that for a lot of reasons, but one of the things we have to prioritize, even over people getting it the fastest that they can, is we're a small shop. What we put up has to work 24/7, 365, and we've done that. GCET rivals are much bigger competitors in reliability, but that doesn't just happen. There will be a lot of configuring and testing that goes on. And if you sort of hopscotch around and pull a lateral here and pull a lateral there, it doesn't work. I also personally like it because there is no way for us to satisfy everyone who wants to be first. It just can't happen. So when we say we will be branching out from, it means that it's probably later rather than sooner in this process, which isn't endless, that we will get to the area where we're pulling the lateral that will cover Meadow Lane and that. The good news is we will finally be able to control our own schedule and finally be able to, once we contract with people and get this build, then it's up to us. And then we're more than happy to have people say, you said you would be done by here. What's going on?
Yeah, people are just gonna want to date.
Right.
And it's like,
Right. I will say a major construction build you don't get, we're gonna be done by October 27th at 12:14 PM. But
time estimates.
Right,
for
right,
component stages as
exactly,
we build out, right?
exactly,
And then
So-
if you screw it up, they can complain.
right, exactly,
Now they have some idea what's happening.
right. So the LCP is important because when people say, is this, the mayor has 5 of her 9 questions, or what comes for who comes before who? And that's not the way we do it. We build outward from the local conversion point because that's how you build a stable, reliable network. So the people who are closest to the LCP are going to get it first.
Yeah.
And it's going to move out in ripples from that. And we will do everything we can to get to everybody as fast as we can. But it's also a good thing because the process of advantaging or disadvantaging certain people or neighborhoods or streets are not what MLPs are supposed to be doing. In fact, there's a reason why MLPs exist, and it is to make sure that customers who need, this is a vital resource. If you ask people, a lot of people tell you they'd rather haul their own water and not lose their internet. So it cannot be something, MLPs were created and electricity is the same way because there were disastrous results from, just to be blunt, politics and people. So we cannot say, okay, I know you really want those people, so we're going there first. And we won't do that because we have to build a network that is fair. It also, frankly, just helps us because we say this is how it's done and this is how it has to work. So I can't bring it to you first.
And I think that the question that's buried in all of those questions is, what are the principles of making decisions? Right. And that's what we keep trying to come back to, right? The principles that drive these decisions are, they're going to be like availability of resources, capital, labor. It's going to be cost, and above all, it's engineering.
Right.
And that's it. And ROI ultimately, right? We're not gonna, we do have to sometimes make choices about, like, we're gonna light up a street where we're gonna have more customers. So that's gonna help us financially keep going to the places where we gonna have slower uptake and less uptake.
That's
And
not the highest.
And it's not the highest, it's not, especially when we have grant funds, we can really make engineering decisions first, which is ideal. Right? We have capital. Sometimes it's more like, if it's revenue driven, we have to say it's going to be based a little bit more on that ROI.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So now we've talked about the labor that we need to get through the IFB. We've talked about money that needs to be released. At this moment, we're assuming that will happen as we really feel it should. You heard about the initial IFB and how expensive it was. We have people who are very capable. We have our own engineering. We have capable outside plant people. We are going to do most of it ourselves. We talked about our priority is a stable integrated build. That's why we build out the way we do. We test all through the entire, he will be spending an enormous amount of time testing the network to make sure that we will be building a network that's robust. But our own staff will do strand, lashing, MSTs, other line equipment. They will pull all the laterals, including big ones like the 48 count and other things I haven't even written down here. And that's the only reason why we can get to an entire area for, frankly, a fraction of what other towns have paid to have other people come in and do, because we don't have that money. And we haven't gotten a bond from the city in 3 years. We're going to come and ask again, but we have to plan on what happens if we don't. So we have spent a long time figuring out how to get stuff done with next to nothing in the way of resources. We're getting pretty good at it. So
Do a maintenance.
right.
And
So we will
there's a
spend,
concern of people,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It'd be nice to know, okay, if we were gonna hire and not do another ISD or whatever it may be, what would be the cost difference in labor? And does it justify getting that build out done quicker if our guys are sitting there doing maintenance for next month, right?
Well, the first time we did it, the difference was about $300,000.
Yeah,
And that was,
that
you know,
didn't justify.
right, we are certainly able, if we took a bond, which I would have to ask, and I plan to ask this fall. If we
That will
took a
be paid
bond,
back by ratepayers.
that will be paid back by ratepayers. It is not
Taking
the
bonds is
company,
just a
it is
capital
not
gain,
not the city giving us money.
Yep.
It's a bond that we would pay back. Then we maybe could do some acceleration, but the way bonds work, we wouldn't get that until next year. So, and we did ask the last administration and they said no. So,
To your point, I mean,
Yeah.
when we looked at the IFB last time and the labor and construction portion of it was so large, that's not our money. It's the city's ARPA funds. And
Right.
we still were responsible in saying no, right? We
Right.
could have done that.
I would be very uncomfortable with doing that with bond funds because it's not gonna change the end revenue, right? So we're taking on debt to get, 6 months earlier some revenue as a business, to the extent that this is one, it
Right.
I
doesn't
also,
make any sense.
I also think all of our perspectives are so skewed by how long make ready is
Yeah.
taking.
Yeah,
Even
of
if
course.
we put a day a week or 2 days a week aside, the minute it's us doing it, it will go a lot faster. That doesn't mean it's all gonna be done in a week, but it means we will have the ability to look out and predict in ways that we are comfortable with. We are always gonna be a little
Right.
conservative, and we're not perfect, so we're not gonna get it to the day and get it all right.
And-
But let's remember, even slow is gonna look like a rocket ship compared to make ready.
And you'll see a timeline. We've already established
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we are going to do the construction and also maintain installs and maintenance, right?
Right.
So we had a discussion
Right.
with outside plant today and how are we going to manage this?
Right.
And so we're always cognizant, we are 7 people. We burn
Right.
out, right? And we don't want to burn out the 2 guys that are out there. So how do we manage this in a way that feels okay for them,
Right.
right? Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we, like, we'll go quickly, I hope at some point, someday, from this thing of like, we're held back by make ready, which means it kind of keeps us like kind of smaller than we otherwise want to be or need to
Right.
be. So like, oh my gosh, like we need to grow to keep up with meeting that
Right.
demand and doing all this. And that'll be a fun new problem to have. It's
Right.
certainly, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about that because we've talked about it. We've talked about like, what would it look like to be in a position to really then have to be adding capacity, right?
Right.
To do more labor and maintenance, and like, that'll be a great fun thing to have.
We were at that point at one point when we
Yep.
had to add another customer
That's
service
true.
rep, right?
Right.
So we hit a point, we had now have 2,200 customers. Was it 1,200? And we were like, okay, 2 of us can't do this. anymore,
Right.
And
Right?
everything else. Yeah.
We'll do everything else.
And
We'll add.
2,200 customers means 2,200 households, means
Household.
over 5,500 people out of 16,000 people in GCET, in that Greenfield have GCET already.
Right.
So we have that's more people, families than send people to schools in Greenfield. So rubber meets the road. So our estimated ARPA IFP budget, it's an estimate because you send out for bids. We don't know until that's by law, that's how you have to do it. But we split it out into pole climbing. We think it's going to be $3,000 to $4,000. The fiber pole and all the related stuff, we've been talking about it, the running back to this is the biggest portion of it, and that's going to be $50,000 to $65,000. Police details are $5,000 to $7,000. So the ARPA IFB portion of the budget is going to be from $58,000 to $76,000. We have a few additional things we need to do. We need to buy some streetlights, and it needs to be GCET that buys them. We pay our own electricity. We have our own contract with Eversource to pay. The city does not pay for our electricity. We can put up streetlights and not turn them on, because what they really are for us is a power tap. And as weird as it is, it's actually more cost effective in a lot of ways to do it that way. That's going to be $14,000 to $15,000. And that just, we put this in, it's a small number, but it shows there are surprises that happen, and the conduit is going to be somewhere around 1.2 to 1.5 thousand dollars to put that conduit in. So 15.2 to 16.5. You add them together and it's really $76 to $90,000, which is about the amount of money that is available and has been allocated in, I can't remember the line item numbers. I used to know it, but and we just need to be able to access it. Timelines. So make ready. It's the 1st of August. We think we're right close at the end. We still think it's going to take them 3 months to do the last little bit. If it takes them 4 months, everything else on this shifts to the right because we don't control that. What we can do is start the things that we can start now. You can't start an IFB too early because it times out, and then you just have to go back to the start and start it again. But we have enough of a comfort level that we are starting the IFB. And it's also just logistical because the IFB, once there's a winning bid, you still have to write the contracts. You still have to work with people who are awash in billions of dollars of stimulus money to set a schedule as to when they can do the work. These companies are busy. They have a lot. It is boom times for companies like this. So we can start the IFB this month. We've already started with Mass DOT because Burnison Road is a state road and you have to put a safety plan together for Mass DOT. I put the first safety plan in like a year ago. So it's there, they know it. We do work with Garrett Postema and Garrett, I think, has been really good, but it does take some time to work through that process. We can start now.
Hey, can we start? And he said, send me the licenses. And I,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So if you look at how timing works, make ready is still the thing that makes us reluctant to be super exact. And we split it up into what jobs are being done. The IFB happens, the one to look at after that is once the IFB is done, there's a couple of weeks that it takes to get everybody contracted and hopefully started work. We think we can start in the beginning of November with our external partners for the things we can't do and have that run through into January. A lot of this stuff isn't totally sequential. Make ready is you do one thing and everybody waits until that's done and then you do the next thing. We can overlap and get things done in ways that allows us to work sooner than we would than having to wait for everything.
I really wish there was a little clarity on the dependencies.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do that. I can do that. But the point is that we will be doing work with fiber poles, lateral poles, splicing. It will take from when we get the licenses through into the early part of next year. Because if you really look at it, we can do some overlapping and get down to at the bottom. We think we will be able to start installing people, not everybody, but start working our way out with the laterals in February, which is 3 months after we've finally gotten the make ready. So it's actually, for a project of this size, it's moving along pretty quickly. I think we've been conservative enough that I'm a little bit comfortable with this. I will add the dependencies in.
Yeah, it's really just a question of what can flow before that.
Right.
And then it's like, if I were doing this for myself, I think I would probably put some kind of a range of error that
I understand.
and have it apply to everything that flows below it. But
I understand. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
When you do that, it's possible to get a hard
Sure. And I will also do it in PDF, and I'm going to send it to the council, and I will, of course, send it to the mayor as well, too, and I'll send it to all commissioners, too. So one of the things we wanted to show is there's still a lot of work to do, right? All we're doing is getting to the point, and we've spent several years getting to the point where we can get to work. once we get to work, we feel pretty comfortable that we can manage a schedule that will move things along. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It just isn't. It is a big build. You know that big builds take time. So, but it does mean we will be able to start saying we are now in control of the schedule, in control of the work we will be doing. We can say, nope, we're not going to make funny decisions that says Arnold Lane is good, and then we're going from Arnold Lane over to, to off of Barton Road. We're going to build out, and we're going to do it consistently. There are also a few places that are still going to be a problem, where the machinery that we talked about for the GAP grant, there's places like, Fargo, East Wayland, places like that, Lover's Lane, where for various reasons, we can only go underground, and we can only go underground. And in Lover's Lanes, people are literally in the middle of the woods, and we're going to have fiber that drops directly.
Well, there's a lot of spots out in the meadows, industry that fall underground.
That's true. That's true. Yes, there are. So that's why having the GAP grant machinery come and be able to work sort of overlapping, not exactly concurrently, but overlapping, will be helpful. But the majority of the people for the fixed wireless, what we do, this is the build we're talking about. We believe that we will be able to start building out. Essentially, the outside labor can start sometime in November if, in fact, the make ready is done. We will preload all of the work that we can possibly do in-house with Mass DOT, with buying street lights. We will start work that we have to do, splicing, because just as the cable has been pulled and is up on the poles doesn't mean it's connected to anything. When you do that, you literally have to take a machine and really, really accurately fuse, hairline thin fiber optic cables together. We do that, and we do it well, but it's a meticulous process.
It's better to do it in the summer than in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
But
well,
to Councilor Healy's point, that may be something that ends up being outsourced.
right. Yeah.
Because it's
If we can.
something that takes a very long time to do. And if our team is still trying to pull laterals and do things like that, that might be a thing that in order to get things done faster, because it's not as expensive as pulling things.
Yeah, those fiber companies, they have specialty.
They
Right.
do
Cars that
for
they pull
butt
off,
play. Yeah. And
on the floor, and they're doing all
Yeah.
of that.
And we are in the position next year where we during this fiscal year that we are operating firmly in the black, and I absolutely will authorize spending for that if we think we can speed things up. But we just want to get a little closer to the vision of how things are
Well,
going
that's
to
it,
work.
we need to be
and-
closer to actually
Yeah.
also having some revenue to replace that.
Right,
Before we start spending
Exactly.
more.
exactly.
Which
But
we will all be, and again, that's the kind of conversation that the commissioners have all the time, it's like, we have some revenue, is it gonna be retained or like, that is the point of having a body like this to do this sort of discussion and oversight, and I think we get on a regular basis, very clear reporting on engineering, as you guys are moving around the city, and on sort of what are the financials that relate to that, where's money coming from, and how is our revenue looking at the time, and I think that is what will continue to happen. So it's not like so I want to be clear, because I feel like sometimes the way that questions are asked, it seems like, I feel defensive as a person who's been doing this for several years, like it's being asked as if we don't ask this question,
Right.
right? We have these conversations all the time. We walked into an organization where those questions weren't asked. It wasn't like, if we build it, when will there be enough money to support the building? It was like, let's just build it and see what happens. And there was like 20 customers, and so we're very, very, very meticulously concerned about that. And there's that is what we do. We don't sit around in meetings and sort of just pat ourselves on the back, we're kind of getting very detailed, and sometimes it has to be an executive session because there's stuff that's going on that's we
Right.
want our competitors to know. So, and it's pretty smart. It's great stuff, but it's, we're a little careful about it. And I think that's to understand what we do when we get together is we're having these kind of conversations.
And we've had some lulls
Yeah.
over the last, year plus because of the make ready.
Nothing to be done.
It's
That's
like, well, we're not gonna just, if we're getting paid by the meeting, that'd be different. We'd meet for this.
Right.
We're not, so.
We didn't need it.
So I will add the dependencies. I will send this all off tomorrow morning. I'm going home. This is done.
Yeah, you are, for
But-
sure.
But, at this point now, so this is the big, is there a more granular level of detail? Right, I mean, I think this should be sufficient, that we're saying, here's our budget, here's how we're gonna do it, here's how this should work. I will send it out to everybody. And then we
Yeah,
will,
My only concern is that it be clear, since the make ready is speculative,
right,
if it slips, what
Yep,
else slips.
yep, yep, yep,
Yeah, what
yep,
pushes it.
yep, gotcha.
So just take the top line out.
All right, I will do that. But I will say, I guess what I'm saying is, from our perspective, we've answered every question we can think of. You can always ask for more. And that's part of the problem, is it can always be an endless process. At some point, you have to say, now, come on, we've said all the money we've spent. We're telling you what we're doing. It's just time to go.
And as commissioners, I can only speak for myself, is that I want to see you all spending time on this
Right.
and not putting 500 pages together of endless
It's
question after
It's
question
been
after question.
hundreds of
And-
hours.
And it's a lot of time. It's costing the users a lot of money and time to answer all of these questions. And we're just not going to do it anymore.
So I will say,
In
just
that manner.
to be thorough, the mayor has asked how many polls there are in Greenfield. I've said, I don't know. We've asked Eversource. They don't know. There.
The poll survey that exists is a poll survey that we did.
Correct.
Right? Eversource knows where the polls are that we surveyed, because you
told
surveyed
them.
them and we told
We
them
told
where they are.
Right.
There is no data source for understanding unless we go out and survey the rest of them, which is a terrible thing for us to do, since we won't use a lot of those polls,
Well-
right? So there's no value to us going and seeking this
But-
information.
And I think the intent behind it is to determine, are there big expenses down the line that were either
That's the
for
question to ask.
whatever reason not communicated to people? And my point is what I was saying, sure, there are a couple little areas. However, we covered a lot of them with grants. We'll get machinery that will allow us to get there without make ready. And even if we do spend some make ready, since we cover such a large percentage of it, you got I know a copy of the mayor's question where she said her calculation said it would be $2 million. And I said, no, respectfully, Mayor, this is how it works. That represents 90+%. So it's not really logical to think if it's $840,000 for that, for 95%, the remaining 5 is going to cost over $1 million. It just doesn't work that way. Right. What's that?
I mean. Just, do what they
Well,
want effectively, but not quite.
Exactly, but there are also ways for us to mitigate. that. So
Yeah.
I think the
Exactly.
question
I think there's-
came from a desire to quantify, and that's fine.
I think there's 2,852 polls. So I'll go with that.
Okay, okay. So
Until you.
I just want to be clear
Yeah.
that we are answering every
I
question that
think
is
we have
sent
been
to
told
us.
that there are questions that have been asked that have not been answered.
We
And I
have
want to
been
be clear that every question that's answerable has been answered.
Yes.
And much of that information is information that's available to the town at all times through the finance office.
Right.
And I'm, unless I'm missing something, and I went back and watched that, by the way, that was the first meeting I think I've ever missed as a GCET
Yeah, I
commissioner,
think
maybe
you're right.
second, and
Right.
everybody shows up.
Sure.
I don't-
Because you.
Some made it late.
Don't come 'cause I wasn't. Yeah. And I went back and watched that.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead for interrupting.
I read all the emails that I think are out there. I hope that I've received, by now, all the emails. I don't know, because there's, has been a lot going on.
Mhm.
And hence our request for, transparency, and everyone to be, like, everyone, city council and everyone. People shouldn't have to FOIA to get this information. I can't find other questions that are answered. And so I'm also I'm kind of lost in this. I can't, aside from the polls, the number of polls, just not a question that I want you to spend time or money answering. Like, I don't know what isn't answered.
Every question that
genuine
was written
question.
to us that we were asked, we've answered. This was the final set. I will write this up as well and send them to you and send them to the mayor. I will group them together because We're at the point where we're now asking sort of the same questions in a slightly different way.
Well, if you're asking also, I mean, I thought, and maybe it was in an email that I heard like some questions about the specific costs, you know, and it's like, that's not a number we can have until we're. able to
Right,
do
we can give
bids,
you
so
a
we can't-
range and we
Right,
have.
like legally, we can't do bid without the ARPA, we can't
Right.
have cost without bid.
Exactly. So,
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Maybe it's a comment, I guess. As a new commissioner, trying to fit in and understand this complex issue. I could be wrong, but I think in the past, sometime there were not steady meetings where anybody actually could come in. Were they posted? Did people
Yes.
come
Yes.
in? During the previous mayors when I'm talking.
Yeah.
No one came in.
No, we didn't stop meeting during COVID, we had meetings on Zoom during COVID.
Yeah,
we had
that's,
meetings-
I just want to say that. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah, I
We had
think
one
that's-
person come.
I think the first meeting of this Board of Commissioners, Rich Roth, the.
First public meeting, because I think we started
Yeah,
on,
the first-
or
yes,
the
it was-
first non-Zoom meeting.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, so that had Rich Roth.
Yep.
That's the only member of the public prior to
Right.
the past couple of months who has ever appeared at any of these meetings. They've always been posted, they've all been
Yep.
public meetings.
So they've been waiting 10 some years, 12 years, I don't know how many total years, and they
5 years.
never.
Is it 5 that
They
we've
never
We've been in
came
business.
in and expressed a concern
Pictures.
until we have a new mayor. I find that interesting.
Well, because this was part of the platform, Pam, like go back and read the FCCPR platform for the election, and it has very specific talking points about GCET, right?
Right.
And some of those include things like, we demand that there be commissioners that are not already served by GCET. I was like,
Well,
well,
but
do you have
that's-
GCET?
No,
Do
but you can
you have
right?
GCET?
And it
Right,
demands that the chair be not served. It's very strange because if they talk to either of us.
Any of us.
Neither of us can get service and Tim's the chair.
It's not about that, it's about.
But it
what
is.
the bylaw- Can I finish? There's a set of bylaws that didn't pertain to this group. And I've met with John Lund, and I said, you know, this whole MGL thing is quite complicated, and I'm willing to sit down and glean out the highlights of the MGL because of the complexity of the issue. And remember, you said like the commissioners are the ones in charge of everything.
Mhm.
There should be oversight, and you know, and I'm happy to like see how else I can participate. Because I wouldn't have minded coming in and knowing that Marquis representative was here, for example. You know, if I had some knowledge about a few things, I would like to be feeling like I'm of more use than show up once in a while and then, you know, look at the agenda and then here's the agenda. That's all I'm saying. I don't feel utilized. I feel like I've done my best. I've met with John numerous times, one-on-one. I show up at these meetings and I'd like to feel a little more connected and not feel like somebody who's been here for 20 or 30 years is, and I'm not disputing that you're the expert or that you haven't put in your time. I just feel like I'm left out sometimes. And maybe that's just my crappy attitude. I don't know, but
I think it's I don't disagree with why you perceive it to be that way. I can tell you you're not being left out of anything. I didn't know that Senator Murphy was going to, so.
That was
I'm
easy.
kidding. So there you go. But what I'm saying is that there's nothing that, other than the fact that I probably do as chair talk to John more than anybody. And that's always going to be the case with any chair of any committee.
I don't,
That's-
that's, I'm
that's-
fine with that.
But anything outside of that, there isn't anything that you're being left out of, because, and I think
don't
this,
receive any information.
yeah, I think this,
Okay.
I think this email thing is a good thing too.
John, that is in the public sector where we have interactions with federal delegates. My board, it's none of their business what interactions we're having with legislators, right? There's just, it would be, if they want to do that, if the staff want to do that and want to ask us to participate in that, that's great. But I also don't feel that as a board, it's our job to micromanage the personnel.
Right.
And how they manage those relationships. So like, I hear what you're saying, you'd like to be included in it, but I also like, we are trying to get out of the weeds and being like micromanaged, you know, from the mayor's office, because that is just not productive for this organization. I'm sorry you feel that I'm talking as if I'm the expert and you're not. What I'm trying to say is it's very difficult to get up to speed on this stuff. There's a lot of detail here, and there's no respect for that expertise, right? There's suspicion of that expertise. The people who sat here, these people are incredible at what they do, right? The people who have volunteered for this have spent a lot of years trying to keep up with them and understand it. And what we're met with are not just questions, but questions that have varied implications in them, that we are not good stewards of the city's resources, that we don't care about our neighbors that don't have internet, about the poor people in this town. And I think I get to be a little upset at that and a little bit offended at that. I feel that there's been a lot of negative stuff said about GCET that's just simply political. It's just simply to sort of throw mud around, right? And it's not, in the end, what's really surprising to me is I think we all want the same thing. I think we all don't want to be hostages to Comcast. So why are we having staff spend 100 hours answering questions that are really just based on suspicion, right? That are not necessarily about the best decision financially for this town. That, I just don't get it.
I hear you, and I have worked with nonprofits and been on state boards, and I think that this gentleman stated the fact that we're moving forward, we're making progress, we have a plan, and that's all I'm saying. If, you know, if a commissioner just means you come once a month or once every 2 months, and that's all you do, then I'm okay. I'm just asking if that could be somehow utilized, a little better connected, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to,
I'm happy to. If you want to look for some more opportunities to get in and learn and see and interact with what's going on, let's talk about it. We're fine. What we're trying to show, we were one of the first people to put the meetings up. We want everybody to know, because the truth is, if there are suspicions, those are the kind of things that flourish when people talk not in public places. We want to have these conversations be in public. So everybody has to own their stuff. So everybody has to say what they really mean. And I think for us,
I gotta so just say,
Yeah.
as I will, you know, I mean, oversight, sure, it's like a business person, you know, finance manager of a mid-sized company, and I have technical background in networking, significant technical background, and I want nowhere near their ops, right? I don't want to be inside their ops. They're outside of my area of expertise. They're complicated. I know enough to know that I believe them when they talk about infrastructure costs, right? But I don't feel like I have anything to do inside the organization. Outside of the organization, you know, I pay attention. I see a budget. I like, is this a crazy budget? No, you know, that's oversight. If I am publicly asked about this, I will boost it. Rah, 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 public infrastructure, right? That I see as my role, right? And that's, I'm pretty engaged with it. I've been engaged with getting public internet infrastructure into this town since well before this was set together, because I think it's significant that we don't have abusive monopolists in control of critical public infrastructure, right? But I don't know enough about the legalities. I don't know enough about specific technical features of what these guys are actually doing to have a meaningful role in it.
And I want people to understand, this structure didn't just happen. This is what the state mandated. The acts that created GCET and created a board of commissioners. What I hear is nobody knows what you're doing. That's not true. The people who are mandated to know what we're doing, our oversight is dictated by, it was Governor Baker who did it. The GCET board of commissioners is the oversight of GCET. That is how it works in every MLP in this state. So the idea that there is an oversight is not true. Yet how involved people want to be in operations, I'm on boards too. I've chaired a bunch of boards. I chaired the school committee for years. The balancing act between oversight and needing to know the parameters of what's going on. People are doing generally what they say they're doing. That's oversight. Saying, I want to have a hand in where, if we're going on this street or that street. That's not oversight. That is mistaking an oversight role for an operational role. So what I want to have people hear out of this is there is oversight at GCET. The oversight at GCET happens in open public meetings. there are issues that are quite complex. I think that's a big part of it, in that some of what we do is just another level more complex. And I think you're right.
Yes,
I think that people get
scared of it.
nervous,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that
They
makes
think that
some
there's
people,
something wrong.
right.
You know, it's like, there is something wrong. Here's what's wrong, right? The utilities have been granted control over infrastructure that we actually paid for with our tax dollars, right? You know who passed along those costs to put those poles in and all that? Like the utilities, we already paid
Right.
for it, and then they
Right.
charge us again for it,
Right.
right? There's a huge problem with the way that internet infrastructure, all infrastructure, electrical infrastructure is done. And like, that's just the reality we operate in. I think we do a decent job of navigating it. It feels wrong because it is kind of wrong. But that's what we're doing.
It's-
And if we don't do it, then, you know, then you have Comcast, except the people who have nothing. You
And
know,
then,
and that's just
I would
unacceptable.
say also another role we could have if we weren't sitting here in a stall is like, what's the strategic direction?
Right. We
like-
haven't been able to do
I
that.
can't do it.
No,
Right.
no,
Which
exactly.
is frustrating, right?
Right.
That's a thing where we can have.
We've done that
But
in the
we're
past.
getting
Yep.
to the end.
Right.
We're finally
Right.
getting to the point where we do have some sight at the end, at least for the North Build.
Yeah.
And the last thing we need is to finally get to the end and then have.
Yeah, I want to just say, you know, David just said, you know, I'm here for the rah, rah, rah. And I heard you earlier say, when people asked you at the Weldon, when you're coming, you said have patience. I think that's a really
Right, that's the
important
major
role.
role.
That's a
And
huge role
explaining it
of
to
you
people.
as somebody that knows. And I know it doesn't feel like much, but that
It's
helps.
huge.
It helps us
Yeah.
so that we don't answer the phone 400 times. It helps Counselor Healy, you know, and
It
so.
bothers me that that's the poster child. I happen to live there. I'll be
No.
abstaining on that vote.
You don't have to be a
right?
poster
There's
child,
no-
you're
there's no
explaining, you're
vote
giving them
for it.
No, I'm
transparency.
just saying it happens to be, I wish it was someplace else first. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'll be abstaining.
Okay.
Well,
And you
there's no
better
vote
have
for
people
that.
voting
Yeah.
in favor of it.
There's not a vote.
We're not gonna have to.
No, I definitely know what a conflict of interest is.
Talk to, you know, I work for the co-op, I talk to a lot of people, in the community a lot. And people ask me about stuff and I know about this stuff because I've been on this board forever and I feel like, okay, here's, it's like this. And that's, to me, that's useful. And it's like, can I tell you, you know, sometimes if it's the sort of person who's interested in that kind of thing, it's like, can I tell you about how cool this is? We're not using some like random outsourced box that we throw a lot of city money into. We have actual engineer happening in our town and expertise and intelligence developing inside our town, which is can be valuable for other stuff. And it's, you know, I like will try to talk up things that matter to me, like, you know, community resilience and having expertise in-house.
So I'm glad a lot of this came up. I wrote to the president. I will come to the council anytime you ask me. I will go to subcommittee meetings anytime you ask me. I will answer any questions that people have because it's easy. I want this. All I care about is that we can get this done. I want it done for people. And there's a lot of noise right now that is some constructive, some not so. And anything I can do in terms of communication, I will come out. People want to call me, if counselors want me to go look at things in their precinct, I will do that. I want to make sure that people understand that we are in no way not trying to answer questions. We are tripping over ourselves to try to send everything to everybody, and we'll continue to do so. We need support, like everyone needs support. We're making clear, we've come to the end of everything we can do. Once the IFB is put together, that's it. We can't move forward without it. And we need support to make sure that everybody, whether it's in the council or the mayor's office, understands that and has enough at this point, should have enough understanding of what's going on to make a reasonable decision. I think this is a no-brainer. You sunk $500,000 into it. There's all people who want it. Why we're not moving forward now, I just don't understand. I don't have to. I've answered all the questions that we've gotten. At a certain point, that process just becomes repetitive. And then it makes you wonder if the point is to get more information or to just keep spinning things out.
I gotta say, I mean, I just like, I can understand people wanting more information or having suspicions or whatever, but I think there's a massive lost opportunity for the town's representation of itself into the world, that we're doing this intelligent, difficult thing. It's being done well. It doesn't have a lot of the issues that a lot of other public internet infrastructure projects in the state certainly have had. And instead of being like, wow, look, we're a smart, forward-looking town, it's like nobody trusts each other and they're gonna stick the knives in. It's madness.
It's what it's been, I mean, it is, like, people like even question whether, you know, we're actually a legal entity, like from the get-go.
And that has started since.
That started on January
It's-
1st.
It's been there longer.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
started from the
I'm
mayor's
sorry.
office. It's been started from the mayor's office. Mayor's office.
and so that, you know, to be questioned in that level, it's just, again, it's really, the point is not about better running the operation. The point is something else that I don't really.
My feeling is, as a concerned resident of the town,
Yeah.
that it's counterproductive for the development and advancement of the town to have politics of this nature where nobody trusts each other and everybody wants to fight all the time. It's a small town. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with that. So I
Yeah.
think
So, anyway, go ahead.
I think the problem you're running into is, you know, your past 3 years have been, well, rough 3 years for city council, which has been a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of lack of trust. And I think that carried over into this new administration, right? And I think really it's tough because we need to move on from that. And I run a business the way I believe it should be run. I have a lot of faith in my head of my departments and other people that work for me. And I'm seeing not just here, but from other department heads that you're not the only ones, right? I'm hearing from a lot of people that you're not the only ones that this is happening. So I don't want you to feel singled out.
No, I don't think we do. But the difference is, I don't work for the mayor, I don't work for the city, and I'm just a citizen, so I can speak up about it. Right, I can say a thing. But I mean, like, he works for us, but like, I don't have to get there. Like, you know, I'll be like, this is the way people are treated, the way professionals are treated, the way people who, I think, go into the private sector and make 2 or 3 times.
No,
They're not, I mean, not.
not hard.
Yes. And you're right, that was work. It's kind of question people think. I've been on both sides of those issues. I've had plenty of questions about how taxes are done or how blah, blah, blah are done. But the reality is we have to be able to treat the people who do the work every day with respect. And we can't, and we also have to just be like honest about what our intentions are. If your intention is to slow a process down, say like, I'm not comfortable giving this funding, just say it, you know, and then that's what we can address. And that's it, you know, there's just a lot of deflection and distraction, it's not helpful. I think another super important role of the commissioners is to become expert. I know that you feel like you want to get in and like you are already helping in the community by being a source of transparency and questioning. Like that's a lot of your role, but also like your job here is to understand it and learn about it so that you can provide better information, ask better questions, and help this place run as well as possible. Like that's the job. We're not here to like lick envelopes, not here to tell John how to like run his staff, but there's like bigger questions that we have to be able to say like, whoa, do we really want to use our staff for that? Like, that's exactly the kind of question that we need to be asking.
Yeah, I
all
mean,
the
like
time.
the extent that we're like here to tell John how to run his staff, it's like our HR policies appropriate.
Right. Do we have some? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope you got some information out of this that helps you. That is our intention, to tell people what's going on, to try to get things done. You know, even if you think we're all terrible, how does it benefit us to not have this work? On the most basic level, if we build out to the north faster, it's good for GCET too. So I'm frankly baffled by some of the attitude because it doesn't jive with the only thing that's really clear is everybody would like to see more GCET in more places. We've told you why it takes longer and why we have to work through things, but I do think there's pretty widespread agreement on that. So I am occasionally baffled as to how we get sidetracked into some of these other things. You can ask me questions about what I do anytime you want, because I'm confident that we are doing the absolute best we can. And if you look at what we've done, and frankly, the smoking hole in the ground GCET was before we took over,
Yep.
I will stack up our accomplishments against anybody's.
I think that's what's exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the part.
And I just want to say, I'm so thankful for the team that I work with every day, that I work with them, and that I, share an office and get to talk to you guys and work together, because if we didn't work so well together, this wouldn't have worked at all.
No.
And every person is crucial. And so when
There's
there's 7 of us that
There's
run
7
this.
people who run this.
And so it is very hard when there is a lot of my time or Bill's time or somebody's time taken to do something that is not appreciated. I need to file with FCC and I need to do this and I need to do that, but I'm putting a binder together. Right. So, and so hopefully that was enough, and I'm always here and will be, right? So we all plan on staying. We love GCET. The reason we're here is the whole mission, right? So,
But yeah, I mean, it's like, it is a little weird, like this, specifically the Franklin County continuing the political revolution thing. I actually felt like I was basically being described as like an insider fat cat of some kind, and it's like the most absurd thing in the world.
I got that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I think the last thing I would say, the last thing I would say, because we're starting to sort of go around, is the answer to all of this is the same. We're just going to do everything in public. We're just going to own everything we say, and we're going to demand that anybody who asks us questions or says anything about us owns what they say, and it all happens in public, which is why I will answer these questions. I will send everybody a copy of this with the dependencies put in, and we're going to continue to do that. And if you want to come ask me a question, you can, but I'm probably going to copy all the other counselors on it too, because everything we're doing, we feel strongly that we are doing the right way. So we're happy. Everybody likes to talk about their work when they think it's going well. There's a lot of stuff we feel like we're doing really well. So we will be happy to talk to people about it. I can't help if people are motivated by the right thing or the wrong thing. I can't help it. I've got stuff to do. On a certain level, I don't care. I just need to make sure that they have what they need and that we get done, because the only thing, it doesn't matter if I'm happy or not happy or all people are me. I don't care. You just have to get the work done. You don't work in the public sector if you got a thin skin.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
right.
part
At
of the
this
game.
point, it's like, the ARPA money, you give it or don't, and then own that decision.
Right, and
And
we'll
don't-
own that decision.
We'll tell you what the chances are if you don't. We'll get about the process of trying to figure out a way to keep going with the North Build. It's going to be hard, but we don't have time to be anything other than really pragmatic.
One of the things that you, and I know we want to move on, and two things. One of the things that you agreed to do that hasn't been allowed in previous administrations, going back to the first administration, when we first changed the mayor, was that if counselors, and I was president of the council, counselors wanted to ask questions. All questions were directed to the president, and the president then forwarded them to the mayor's office. And individual counselors were not allowed to call department heads, because you didn't want 13 counselors calling with 13. Well, either one, the same question,
Right.
Because it takes so much time.
Sure.
And the president of the council, as well as with the mayor, and I can remember having this heated exchange with our first mayor that wanted to sit at the table on this side of the rail and participate in all the debate. And I said, this is separation of executive and legislative. We'll get your questions answered, because it does get overwhelming. And I see, you show me and I hear how overwhelming it gets. I think it's slowing. I think having that meeting the last time was helpful. And
you can come anytime.
and you're open to doing it.
And
the second thing,
I will invite all counselors. It's the president's job to worry about quorum issues. I would not presume on his authority to do that. But every counselor is invited to come at every meeting.
Yeah, they shouldn't technically.
But that's not,
Even if that's
that's
just-
not my
that-
issue. That's for the.
If it walks like a
council to
duck,
decide on this.
quacks like a duck, it's a duck. But this is what I've been doing, if you can see me looking at my phone. I'm watching my daughter's softball game on GCET. It's the championship. They're winning 4-0 and it's the bottom of the 7th. So I had to keep up because they're missing her last game, probably at Murphy Park.
I have nothing else, so. if You have questions or other people do?
That a motion?
That would be a motion to.
Second.
Third
All in favor?
You have to know. You have to roll call it.
Jen,
Jen Johnson says aye.
David Russell says aye.
Everyone says aye.
Tim says
Okay,
aye.
we are adjourned and I am stopping the recording now.